There is a moment in season 5 where Simon is standing in the ruins of a collapsed grocery store, singing the theme song of Cheers to a 7-year-old vampire girl he has promised to protect, and the crown on his head is slowly erasing every memory he has of who she is. The shelves around them are empty. The world outside is a wasteland of irradiated rubble. There is no food for the sick child in his arms. There is no one coming to help. And Simon Petrikov, who was once a scholar and an antiquarian, and a man who wore glasses and read books and was engaged to be married, is doing the only thing he has left to offer her, which is making her laugh. He is singing a television theme song she has never heard and will never hear again, performing both sides of a muted television bit with a rusted soda can, pulling faces, doing voices. She has a fever. He does not know what lives in the dark beyond the firelight. And what he is singing, the lyrics he is using to stay himself, to keep the crown from swallowing the last of his name, is a song about a bar where everybody knows your name. That is what Adventure Time is. That is the engine underneath everything. A show about the lengths to which people go, with whatever small and broken tools they have left, to make each other feel less alone. That is the reason the show feels comforting. Not because it is safe, not because the world of ooh is gentle or forgiving or simple. The show is set on a planet that destroyed itself. Its most beloved recurring character is a man who lost his mind to a cursed artifact over 1,000 years ago and has been surviving ever since as a hollow echo of the person he used to be. Its hero grows up, loses things, makes mistakes, and has to learn to live with what he cannot fix. There is nothing soft about the bones of this story, and yet the show feels like a warm light left on in a window. It feels like someone sitting with you in the quiet. It feels, somehow, like being held. That is not an accident. That is architecture. The comfort of Adventure Time was built, deliberately and with enormous care, out of the same materials as the sadness, out of impermanence and loss, and the specific texture of surviving a world that does not promise you anything. The show understood something that most entertainment for children pretends is not true, which is that what people actually find comforting is not the absence of difficulty. It is the presence of someone beside you while you go through it. Welcome to Tome. Get comfortable. This one goes deep. Let us get into it. Adventure Time premiered on Cartoon Network on April 5th, 2010. It ran for 10 seasons and concluded on September 3rd, 2018, with a 44-minute series finale called Come Along With Me. In the years between those two dates, it produced 283 episodes and became one of the most critically lauded animated series of its era, winning 3 Annie Awards, 8 Primetime Emmy Awards, and a Peabody Award. At its peak, the show drew 14 million weekly viewers. It spawned comics, merchandise, video games, 3 miniseries, Stakes in 2015, Islands in 2017, and Elements in 2017, and eventually 2 spin-off series. Adventure Time, Distant Lands on HBO Max, which aired from 2020 to 2021, and Adventure Time, Fiona and Cake, which premiered on Max in 2023. The franchise has never fully ended. It keeps generating new stories because the world it built and the relationships it established have proven to be, in the truest sense of the word, generative. People cannot stop returning to them. What this video is about is why. Not why the show is good. That is a different and more ordinary question. What this video is about is why the show feels the way it does, why people queue it up specifically when they cannot sleep, why it is what people return to when they are sick, or grieving, or tired, in the particular way that modern life makes people tired, why something set in the nuclear-scorched ruins of planet Earth, populated by candy monsters and undead vampires, and a man who has been losing his mind for 1,000 years, manages to feel, consistently and reliably and almost physically, like comfort. The answer is not simple. It is built from many things. It is built from the show's relationship with time and impermanence. It is built from the way the show handles grief, not by solving it, but by sitting inside it. It is built from the specific warmth of Finn and Jake's friendship, which is one of the most careful and precise depictions of love between two people that children's television has ever produced. It is built from the music, from the voice performances, from the visual grammar of the show, the way it uses color and landscape and silence. It is built from the biographical circumstances of the people who made it, the specific texture of their own inner lives, worked into the seams of every episode. This video will take all of those things apart and look at them separately, and then put them back together into something that explains why. When you are lying in the dark with your eyes closed and the show is playing, you feel, in whatever small and specific way, less alone. The first thing to understand about Adventure Time's comforting quality is what the show is actually set in, and what the show does with that information. The land of Oo is the post-apocalyptic remains of Earth. This is not a background detail. It is the organizing fact of the entire universe. The Mushroom War, a nuclear conflict that happened roughly 1,000 years before the events of the series, destroyed human civilization, irradiated the landscape, and produced the conditions under which magic and talking candy and shape-shifting dogs became possible. The ruins of the old world are everywhere. Finn and Jake's tree fort sits in the middle of what was once a populated region. The horizon, in nearly every exterior shot, contains the silhouettes of collapsed skyscrapers, upturned highways, the skeletal geometry of a civilization that is gone. The show does not announce this loudly in its early episodes. It does not sit the viewer down and explain the nuclear apocalypse. It just leaves the ruins there, in the background, and lets the viewer absorb them at whatever pace they manage. The first season feels largely like a free-form adventure show about a boy and his dog doing heroic things in a weird fantasy world. The ruins look decorative, the Candy Kingdom looks cheerful. The characters are alive and curious and full of energy, but the ruins are not decorative. Think about what that actually means. Every structure they pass that is crumbling, every field of rubble they cross, every landmark that is half submerged in the earth, that was someone's city. Those were streets where people walked. Those were buildings where people worked and lived and gathered. The civilization that left those marks ended catastrophically, and every character in the show is either the direct product of that catastrophe, the survivor of it, or the descendant of something that was born from it. The Candy Kingdom was not built as a charming place for candy people to live. It was built, as the show eventually reveals, by Princess Bubblegum from the biological remains left over from the war's aftermath. It is, in the deepest sense, a civilization raised from the dead. What the show does with this, and this is the first layer of the comfort, is refuse to make it bleak. The post-apocalyptic setting is real and present and woven into every corner of the world, but the response of the show to that setting is to insist on life. The colors are extravagant, the adventures are joyful, the characters laugh and bicker and make things and form friendships and fall in love. The world that replaced the dead one is not trying to mourn what came before, it is simply trying to be. And watching something simply try to be, watching life persist and flower in the middle of ruin, is one of the most fundamentally reassuring things a story can show you. This is not naive optimism. The show does not pretend the destruction did not happen. It never forgets the ruins are there, but it frames survival itself as a form of beauty. Oo is not a paradise that exists in defiance of catastrophe. It is a world that was made possible by it. The magic, the strange creatures, the floating islands, the Candy Kingdom itself, none of it would exist without the Mushroom War. And the show looks at that and does not flinch from the horror of it, but it also says, look what grew. That is a very specific kind of comfort, not the comfort of safety, not the comfort of rescue, the comfort of persistence, the comfort of finding that after the worst possible thing, something is still here, something is still moving, something is still, against all reason, singing. There is a specific quality to the visual presentation of the ruins that reinforces this reading. The collapsed buildings in the horizon of Oo's grasslands are not rendered with the dark, heavy palette of conventional post-apocalyptic media. They are part of the same vibrant colour field as everything else, the same greens and yellows and pinks. They are woven into the world's beauty rather than standing against it. The show uses this compositional choice deliberately and consistently. The ruins do not dominate the frame, they contextualize it. They sit in the background of scenes of joy and adventure and domestic comfort, quietly reminding you what the world was built on without overwhelming what it has become. This is the show's visual argument about the relationship between beauty and history. Beauty does not erase history. History does not prevent beauty. Both can coexist in the same frame, and the coexistence is not contradiction. It is truth. It is the most accurate thing the show can tell you about what it means to be alive, inside a story that contains everything real stories contain, which is damage as well as joy, and the particular quality of light that seems brighter when you know what the dark looks like. The early episodes establish this world with a lightness of touch that is itself a form of mastery. Adventure Time in its first season is funny and fast and full of absurdist energy. The jokes land cleanly, the action is fluid, the characters are immediately distinct and appealing. The show earns your trust and affection in these early episodes before it asks you to carry anything heavier. It shows you the party first. Only later does it show you what the party is built on top of. Pendleton Ward created Adventure Time and served as its showrunner for the first 4.5 seasons. In an October 2nd, 2014 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, he revealed that he had stepped down from the showrunner role sometime during the 5th season without announcement, simply because it was, as he put it, driving him nuts. He is self-described as naturally introverted. The pressure of running a globally successful franchise, the meetings, the merchandise, the ancillary products, the direction of large teams of creative people every single day was not compatible with who he is. He told Rolling Stone that dealing with people every day wears on you, that the show had become a beast, and that for him, having quality of life outweighed the need to control the project and make it great all the time. He left the showrunner post, passed it to his CalArts classmate and longtime collaborator, Adam Muto, and returned to working from home, drawing and writing at a scale that felt manageable to him. Ward has described himself as being drawn to the emotion of feeling happy and sad at the same time, or happy and scared at the same time. That was not a casual remark. That emotional state is the DNA of the show. Adventure Time, at its core, is a comedy that is simultaneously a tragedy, a fantasy that is simultaneously a memory, a children's show that is simultaneously one of the most precise portrayals of adult loss and grief and longing that has ever appeared on television. Ward is also the voice of Lumpy Space Princess. This is worth sitting with for a moment. Lumpy Space Princess, the melodramatic, perpetually aggrieved, endlessly self-sabotaging purple lumpy cloud person who is somehow always in the middle of a crisis of her own making, is performed by the show's creator, a man who has described himself as someone who finds daily human interaction exhausting, who prefers to work with the lights off, who left the biggest job of his career because it was destroying his quality of life. The gap between the character and the voice behind her is both enormous and, once you see it, completely logical. Lumpy Space Princess is what it sounds like when an introvert performs the experience of being overwhelmed by social existence. She is Ward's own relationship with the outside world, rendered into a cartoon, pushed to absurdist extremes, and made into a joke, and the joke is always tender. The show never stops loving Lumpy Space Princess, even at her most ridiculous. That tenderness is Ward's too. This biographical layer matters because it explains the show's specific register of warmth. The show was not made by people trying to produce a comforting product. It was made by people putting their own inner lives into the material, their own anxieties, their own loneliness, their own complicated relationships with the idea of growing up, their own capacity for the specific ache of loving something you cannot hold on to. Rebecca Sugar, before she left the show after storyboarding Simon and Marcy to create Steven Universe, described being encouraged by the creative team to put her own life experiences into the character of Marceline. She did, and the show became better for it, and stranger for it, and more true for it. The Forbes magazine 30 Under 30 entertainment list in 2012 included Sugar, noting she was responsible for writing many of the best episodes of Adventure Time. That recognition was deserved, but the quality of her episodes came not from technical skill alone, but from the willingness to be personal inside the material. What you feel when you watch Adventure Time and find it comforting is not the comfort of a product designed to soothe you. It is the comfort of recognizing something real. It is the comfort of looking at a piece of art and thinking, someone felt this. Someone made this out of what they actually felt. And that is a very different experience from consuming entertainment that was engineered to make you feel a particular way. One is a trick, the other is a bridge. There is a line in the Rolling Stone profile that captures this precisely. Ward is describing why he found the show so exhausting to run, and he says that spending the extra energy and time you do not have to make something worth making, to make it awesome, wears you out. That is the relationship between the creator and the creation made visible. Ward was pouring something real into the show, something that cost him, and the show carries that cost in its texture. You can feel the weight of genuine investment in every frame, not because the show is self-serious or solemn, because the people making it cared enough about it to put themselves into it, even when that hurt. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a scene in Holly Jolly Secrets Part 2 that most people remember as a Christmas special twist, and then move past. The episode aired on December 5th, 2011, as the 20th episode of the third season. The premise is modest enough. Finn and Jake find a suitcase of VHS tapes that belong to the Ice King, labelled as his secret video diaries, and host a viewing party to decode his supposed evil secrets. The early tapes are what you would expect from the Ice King: a penguin dance party, a meandering journal entry about feelings, a scene of him crying in the corner. The show plays all of this for comedy. Jake laughs. Finn tries to fast forward. BMO processes everything in his characteristically literal way. And then the last tape begins. A man appears on screen who does not look like the Ice King. He is human and slight and wearing glasses, and he is clearly trying to hold himself together. He introduces himself as Simon Petrikov. He says he is recording this tape so that people will know his story. He explains that he found a magical crown purchased from a dock worker in northern Scandinavia, and that when he put it on his head for what he describes as a joke, it began to send visions into his mind. He says he has no memory of what he did while under its influence. He says his fiancée, Betty, looked at him with contempt after one of his episodes. He says the crown is changing him. His skin is bluing, his hair is whitening, his nose is lengthening. He is still recognizably himself in the tape, but only barely, and the camera catches the exact moment when you can see him slipping. He says, essentially, that he is losing his mind and cannot stop it. He begs for forgiveness for anything he might do to anyone who might be watching. He begs, with the specific desperation of someone who knows time is running out, that his princess might love him again. Then the tape ends, and the Ice King, who has been watching from outside the window, and who has come in, and who has been sitting with Finn and Jake for the end of the tape, says that now they know his terrible secret. And the terrible secret is that he used to wear glasses. He does not remember the tape. He does not recognize the man on screen. He is not playing coy or pretending. He genuinely has no idea that he just watched himself disappear. That is the scene. That is what the show does in its first Christmas special, aimed at children, airing on a December Monday night on Cartoon Network. It shows you a man losing himself to something he cannot control, and it does so with enough craft and care and earned storytelling that novelist Lev Grossman told NPR after the episode aired that he looks at the Ice King and thinks this cartoon is about his father dying. Think about what that actually means. A children's cartoon in its third season, a show that still, in these early episodes, featured the Ice King as a recurring comic villain who kidnapped princesses and got beaten up by a 15-year-old, managed to produce an episode that evoked the specific and devastating experience of watching someone you love disappear into dementia, not because the show was trying to be prestige television, because the people making it were being honest about what they saw when they looked at this character they had built. They saw the tragedy underneath the comedy, and they did not hide it. The series writer Patrick McHale developed the backstory of the Ice King for this episode, turning what was originally going to be a standard Christmas special into something profoundly different. Ward called the decision brilliant when Tom Kenny, who voices both the Ice King and Simon Petrikov, recorded his lines for the flashback tape. Ward said it felt like an authentic, old-time radio horror drama. That description is precise. The performance Kenny gives as Simon Petrikov is one of the great acts of characterization in animated television. He finds, inside the instrument he uses to voice the Ice King's absurd babbling chaos, a completely separate voice, measured, frightened, dignified in its fear, and he draws it out with the care of someone who understands what the moment requires. The contrast between Simon's voice and the Ice King's voice is the tragedy made audible. You can hear what was lost. The comforting thing about this, and this does become comforting, in the precise way that honesty is comforting, is that the show is willing to see you. The show does not look away from the hard thing. It sits with you while you look at it. Holly Jolly Secrets. Part 2 is funny, right up until the moment it stops being funny, and then it is something else entirely. And the show does not apologize for that, or rush to get back to funny. It holds the moment. It lets Tom Kenny's performance as Simon Petrikov sit in the room, and then Finn walks over and gives the Ice King his tapes back, quietly, without making a big speech about it, and Jake says it is from him too. The show does not explain why this is the right thing to do. It just shows you two kids doing it, instinctively, because they understood without being told that this fragile and ridiculous man in his underpants carries a weight they cannot fix, and the only thing they can offer is a small kindness. That is the moral grammar of Adventure Time. Not heroism in the sword and shield sense, kindness in the witnessing sense. You cannot fix what is broken in the Ice King. You cannot give Simon back his mind, but you can give him his tapes and say it is from me too, and the show trusts that you will understand, without any further elaboration, why that matters. The episode was watched by 2.513 million viewers. It received largely positive critical reviews, with multiple critics noting the way it transformed the Ice King from a comic nuisance into something altogether different, tragic in the specific way that people are tragic when they become separated from who they used to be and do not know they have lost the thread back. There is a version of the Ice King that the show has never shown you directly, but that you have been building towards since season 3. He is not the Ice King at all. He is Simon Petrikov, age 47, antiquarian, standing in the wreckage of a world that has just destroyed itself, looking for a child he has promised to protect. He does not know how long the world has been on fire. He does not know what happened to Betty. He does not know if there is anyone else left alive. He knows one thing, which is that there is a small girl with him, a young half-demon, half-human child named Marceline, who was standing alone in the ruins when he found her, crying, and that he made a promise to keep her safe, and that the crown he carries is the only tool he has powerful enough to make good on that promise, and that every time he puts it on, he loses a little more of who he is. I Remember You is the 25th and penultimate episode of Season 4. It aired on October 15th, 2012. The episode was storyboarded by Cole Sanchez and Rebecca Sugar, from a story by Patrick McHale, Kent Osborne, and Pendleton Ward. The original working title was Help. The plot is surface simple. The Ice King arrives at Marceline's house wanting to write a song together. He has brought a box of old notes and letters and newspaper clippings as inspiration, all items he does not understand the significance of, all items that come from a time before he was the Ice King, all items that carry Simon Petrikov's fingerprints. Marceline agrees to work with him, despite her obvious reluctance, and over the course of the episode she tries repeatedly and increasingly desperately to get the Ice King to remember who he is. She shows him a newspaper clipping of Simon Petrikov. She finds a picture of herself as a child that Simon took. She reads a note scrawled on the back of the picture, a note Simon wrote to her before his mind was fully consumed, asking her to forgive him for whatever the crown makes him do, telling her that he loves her, telling her that he is losing himself, and he is afraid she is going to lose him too. The Ice King reads the note aloud. He thinks it is song lyrics. He sets it to music, obliviously, happily, the way he does everything. And Marceline begins to cry, and she begins to sing along, and the camera holds on her face while she sings a song that is her former guardian's farewell letter, sung back to her by the hollow thing he became. Finn and Jake are watching from outside. Jake asks what is going on in there. Finn says he has no idea. The episode ends on a flashback. The ruins of the Mushroom War. A child, Marceline, very young, standing alone in the wreckage, crying. Simon approaching her, wiping her tears, crossing the street to a destroyed toy store and finding a stuffed bear in the ruins, bringing it back, giving it to her. She smiles. She stops crying. He has given her Hambo. The show does not add music to that flashback to tell you how to feel. The song from the present-day scene, the Remember You duet that Rebecca Sugar wrote and performed on an omnichord for the demo, whose playing ended up worked directly into the episode, continues softly underneath. The two timelines layer, the old man and the young child in the ruins, the 1,000-year-old vampire and the man who cannot remember her in the present, both of them in their respective moments, finding a way to make something out of nothing, finding a way to say, I am still here with you. The episode was watched by 2.535 million people when it aired and received universal acclaim. The song Remember You, all 4 songs in the episode were written by Rebecca Sugar, with Cole Sanchez co-writing the lyrics on one of them, became one of the most emotionally resonant pieces of music the show ever produced. Sugar used an omnichord for the demo, and her playing on it was eventually worked directly into the final episode. The result is music that sounds intimate in a specific and unusual way. You can hear the instrument's small, slightly imperfect resonance, the fingerprints of the person who made it still on the recording. That intimacy is the register the episode operates in throughout. It does not feel like a television episode. It feels like something private, like something you should not be watching, because it is too honest. And that feeling, the feeling of accidentally witnessing something real, is one of the most powerful effects a piece of storytelling can produce. What makes I Remember You comforting, and it is comforting, despite the fact that it is one of the most genuinely sad pieces of children's television ever produced, is that the relationship itself is not a tragedy. The loss is a tragedy. The crown is a tragedy. The 1,000 years of slow erasure is a tragedy. But the love between Simon and Marceline, the specific quality of his care for her, and her stubborn refusal to let go of who he was, long after any reasonable person would have given up, is not tragic. It is beautiful, and the beauty does not cancel the sadness. They exist in the same episode, in the same song, in the same frame. That coexistence is the point. That is what the show is about. There is a version of Marceline that the show is careful not to show you directly for a long time, which is the Marceline who has been trying to forget Simon, not the Marceline who hates the Ice King or avoids him out of cruelty. The Marceline who keeps moving, keeps relocating. The show reveals this in an episode earlier in the series, because she cannot bear to stay anywhere near a man who looks like Simon and sounds like Simon when he is momentarily lucid and is nothing like Simon in any way that matters. That is not a personality quirk. That is survival. That is the specific coping mechanism of someone who has been loving a person who keeps disappearing and who has learned that the only way to keep going is to keep moving. That too is comforting, in the way that recognition is comforting. The show sees that specific kind of loss, the loss of someone who is still technically present, and treats it with the gravity it deserves. It does not call it unusual or heroic or tragic. It just shows it. It says, this is a thing that happens to people, and here is what it looks like from the inside. Simon and Marcy, the 14th episode of Season 5, aired on March 25th, 2013. The episode was confirmed as the last episode Rebecca Sugar storyboarded before leaving the show to create Steven Universe. In an interview, Sugar explained that up until storyboarding this episode, she had been concurrently working on both Adventure Time and Steven Universe. When it came time to storyboard Simon and Marcy, she realized the workload was too much and that she had to step down from Adventure Time to focus on her own show. The episode was consequently one she gave everything to. The production team, including Adam Muto, who contributed additional scenes and later said Sugar put it over the top, treated it as a special occasion. Everyone was pitching in to make this one remarkable. The episode's production team described it to Cartoon Network, when pitching the story, as the film The Road, except for kids. The comparison is apt in some ways, and entirely misleading in others, because The Road is a story about a world that has nothing left, and Simon and Marcy is a story about a world that has nothing left and still finds reasons to sing. Simon scat sings the whole way to town while pushing Marceline in an office chair because he does not want her to walk. He acts out a Cheers episode through a broken television screen. He breaks into an empty soup shop because Marceline needs chicken soup, and then tells her that vandalism is wrong. The episode is set 996 years before the present day. Marceline is 7 years old. Simon is still recognizably himself. The glasses, the scholarly manner, the specific brand of gentle, playful humor that the Ice King still echoes in his more lucid moments. But the crown is already doing its work. Every time he puts it on to protect them, he loses a little more. The episode documents this in real time. Simon putting the crown on to fight off mutated creatures in the dark. Marceline begging him to take it off. Simon reassuring her, and then becoming the Ice King for the duration of the fight. Calling her Gunther, making ice, losing himself. Then the crown comes off, and he is back. Slightly less Simon than before, slightly more what he will eventually become. The Cheers theme song choice is where the episode becomes singular. The song, purchased at the cost of licensing the original recording, with another sitcom theme in the running as an alternative, is a song about belonging somewhere, about being known, about a place where you are always glad you came. Simon is singing it because it is the happiest memory of human connection he can reach for, in a world where human connection has been destroyed. He is singing a song about welcome, as an act of resistance against a universe that has taken every welcoming place away from him. And he is singing it to a child who has also lost everything, so that she will not lose one more thing tonight, which is the comfort of the sound of a person keeping it together for her sake. He sings it while wearing the crown too. He uses it as a tether, the lyrics, the melody, the memory of what a world with other people in it felt like. He uses all of it to stay Simon long enough to keep Marcy safe, but even the song stops working. By the end, when the crown comes off, he calls her Gunther by mistake. He has lost one more yard of himself. The death of his personality is happening in real time, and the episode does not look away from it, and the episode does not explain it, and the episode does not provide any consolation for it. It just shows you. That is the show being honest about a kind of loss that has no clean answer. The ending of Simon and Marcy is bittersweet in the precise sense that the bit is very small and the sweet is very large. Marcy ends her story in the present day by saying the ending was happily ever after, and you understand that she means it, even knowing what came after. Their time together was good. The good of it does not disappear into what happened next. This is the logic of time adventure. Before time adventure was written, the good that happened is still there. It will always have been there. The episode was watched by 2.6 million viewers. It was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Short Format Animation at the 65th Primetime Emmy Awards. It lost to a Mickey Mouse short, which is the kind of outcome the universe produces sometimes. The nomination was real. The episode is real. Rebecca Sugar's goodbye to the show is preserved in every frame of it. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The friendship between Finn and Jake is the spine of the show, and it deserves to be treated as seriously as the show treats it, because the show treats it very seriously indeed. On the surface, the relationship looks like the most common structure in adventure fiction: the hero and his loyal companion. Finn is the hero. Jake is the companion. Jake has magical powers that make him useful. He stretches and shapes to carry Finn, shield Finn, lift Finn, become a boat or a ladder or a wall whenever the situation requires it. He is, in the most literal possible sense, support, but that reading is wrong, or rather, it is incomplete in the way that the most interesting readings always are. The real dynamic between Finn and Jake is not hero and companion. It is older brother and younger brother, specifically the older brother who has grown up a little faster and has figured out how to be at ease in the world, and the younger brother who is desperately earnest and trying to figure out what it means to be a good person. Jake is not primarily useful to Finn. Jake is primarily the person who teaches Finn how to be okay. Think about what that actually means in the texture of the show. Jake is the one who tells Finn, when Finn is heartbroken or confused or frightened, that the right response is to just let it happen and flow through him. Jake is the one who demonstrates by example that you do not have to be perfect or certain or resolved to be worthy of love. Jake has a complicated past. The show eventually reveals he had a criminal phase, and he has made peace with it in a way that Finn has not yet learned how to do with his own messes. Jake can nap in the middle of a crisis. Jake can eat a sandwich with full attention and full contentment at a moment when the world is literally on fire. Jake is not enlightened. He is something more useful than enlightened. He is comfortable in his own skin. That ease is what Finn is always trying to reach. The show traces Finn's growing up through his relationship with Jake, as much as through any of his external adventures. The adventures are where Finn is tested. Jake is where Finn recovers from the tests. And the show understands that this is how the people who love us actually function in our lives, not primarily by being useful to us, but by being a place we can return to. Jake the Dog, which opened Season 5 on November 12th, 2012, pairing with Finn the Human as the two-part season premiere, is one of the clearest demonstrations of what the show understands about their dynamic. Jake's version of the season opening story, Finn's wish for the Lich's defeat having gone catastrophically wrong, Jake deposited in a wish-granting time room run by the entity known as Prismo, is essentially about how Jake approaches crisis. He does not panic. He does not make a plan. He makes friends with Prismo the Wishmaster, plays a board game, has breakfast, and eventually figures out the solution by being present with the situation rather than trying to force an outcome. The contrast with Finn's arc, which will ultimately involve the Citadel and the loss of his arm and the specific devastation of discovering his father, is the point. Jake is the gravity in this relationship, the pull towards center, the proof that you can be fully in the middle of an impossible situation and still be okay. The show is not naive about what that kind of love costs. It does not present Jake's ease as the default state, or as something anyone can simply choose. It understands that some people carry that quality and others have to learn it, and that the learning is difficult and ongoing. Finn spends the entire run of the series learning it. By the end, he has not mastered it. Not really, but he has internalized enough of Jake's example that he can begin to do the thing Jake has always done, which is to show up for the people he loves, not with solutions, but with presence. The tree fort they share is not backdrop, it is the emotional center of the universe. BMO is there, the couch is there, the table where they eat breakfast together every morning is there. The show returns to those spaces, the way the characters themselves return to them, for the specific quality of stillness that comes from being somewhere that knows you. The visual grammar of the tree fort interior, its warm colors, its clutter of lived-in objects, its candles and shelves, and the particular light that falls through its windows, is designed to feel like homecoming. Every time the show returns to it, after a difficult adventure, the composition settles, the palette softens, and the viewer exhales. That is a design choice. It is not accidental. The show's art team was aware of what the tree fort needed to do, which was function as a visual anchor for the audience's nervous system. You have been in the dark cave, in the dungeon, in the nightosphere, in the ruins. Now you are home. The show tells your body this before it tells your mind. The Finn and Jake friendship models something that is deeply reassuring to watch, which is unconditional accompaniment, not unconditional agreement, not unconditional approval. Jake tells Finn when he is being an idiot. Jake has opinions and expresses them and is sometimes wrong, but the accompaniment itself, the fact of someone who is always going to be there when you come back from the hard thing, is constant. And watching that kind of love displayed with the specific clarity and warmth that the show manages is, for many people, the closest thing to experiencing it themselves. The most important thing the show does with their friendship is refuse to sentimentalize it. The friendship is not presented as perfect or uncomplicated. Finn and Jake bicker. They have different priorities. There are episodes where they frustrate each other in ways that feel specific and true. The show does not protect the friendship from friction because it understands that friction is part of what makes a relationship real. What the show does protect is the bedrock underneath the friction, which is the fundamental fact of two people who have chosen each other and keep choosing each other, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is imperfect, even when the world around them is on fire. That is the friendship, as the show actually presents it, not a fantasy of perfect companionship, a fact of imperfect companionship that endures, and the endurance is what makes it beautiful. The show's relationship with impermanence is where it begins to become something genuinely singular. Most stories for children are secretly about the permanence of things. They reassure, they resolve, they promise that what matters will be protected. The hero wins, the love lasts, the home remains. The ending is the ending, and it is good. Adventure Time understands that this promise is not one any honest story can keep, and it declines to keep it. The show's world changes. Relationships end and transform. Characters leave and do not always come back. Finn grows up, literally, visibly, year over year, and the boy he was in Season 1 does not exist anymore by Season 6. The show does not pretend he does. It does not keep Finn at the same developmental stage to preserve the comfort of familiarity. It lets him change, and it lets those changes be sometimes painful, and sometimes confusing, and sometimes irreversible. Billy's Bucket List, which aired as the final episode of Season 5 and set up the Season 6 premiere, is where the show first reveals to Finn that his biological father is alive and imprisoned in a multiversal prison called the Crystal Citadel. The legendary hero Billy, voiced by Lou Ferrigno throughout his appearances in the series, appears to Finn as a constellation of stars after his death at the hands of the Lich, and passes along the message, "Your father is alive, your father is there." And what Finn does with that information, the hope he carries into the Crystal Citadel, is one of the most painful things the show has ever set up, because the show has spent enough time establishing what Finn needs from a father figure, and it has established that he has never had one, and you can feel the weight of that need in the way he crosses into the Citadel. Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel, the Season 6 premiere that aired on April 21st, 2014, deliver the consequence. Finn meets Martin Mertens, his biological father, voiced by Stephen Root. Martin has no clear memory of his son. He shows more interest in escaping the Citadel than in reconnecting with the boy reaching out for him. He manipulates Finn, uses Finn's desperate desire for connection to get his injured leg fixed, and then abandons him again. The Citadel collapses around them. Martin escapes in a pod. Finn grabs onto the escaping portal with his grass sword, and the sword mutates and overwhelms his arm, and Finn's arm is severed. He falls into the water. Jake gets to him. A flower grows from the stump where his arm was. The show holds that for a moment. The flower, the water, the boy floating, armless, looking at the sky. Jake asking if he is okay. Finn not answering. The show does not add dramatic music here to tell you how to feel. It does not cut to a recovery montage. It just holds the image of Finn floating, and the flower growing from the wound, and the silence of a question that has not been answered. This is the show being honest about what disappointment feels like, not the disappointment of losing a thing you wanted, the specific, crushing disappointment of losing a thing you needed, the father who was supposed to want you, the connection that was supposed to make sense of the loneliness, the answer to the question of where you came from. None of it was what Finn hoped. And the arm is gone, and a flower grew. The flower is the show's response to the question of how you survive something like that, not the healing of a wound, the growth of something unexpected from it, not restoration, transformation, not the same arm, not the same Finn, but something new and strange and alive where the loss was. That image, the flower growing from the wound, is one of the most quietly radical images in the show's history, because it refuses the conventional narrative of recovery. Recovery in most stories looks like returning to the way things were before. The flower says, you cannot return to the way things were, but something can grow, something already is. Finn's emotional state in the wake of the Citadel is addressed in the Season 6 episode Breezy, which aired on June 5th, 2014. The episode was written and storyboarded by Jesse Moynihan and Derek Ballard, and Moynihan described it publicly as a deeply personal episode based on things that had happened in his own life. Dr. Princess examines Finn's flower arm at the opening of the episode. The flower is wilting. Finn tells her, when she asks how he is feeling, that he does not feel anything, and then he slides off the examination table. Dr. Princess tells him the flower thrives on good vibes, that it is wilting because he is falling into depression, that he needs to bounce back. The episode documents what Finn does with this advice, which is to attempt to feel something by going on a kissing marathon across princess by princess, accompanied by a small bee named Breezy who secretly loves the flower on his arm. The episode is uncomfortable in specific ways that are entirely intentional. Finn kissing princess after princess, and feeling nothing reads as a cartoon version of what people do when they are numb from grief and trying to manufacture sensation. Finn knows it is not working. He says so repeatedly. He tells Breezy that he should just let the flower die. The show lets him mean it, and then Breezy sings to him in the night, a song that comes from her own genuine and unrequited feeling. Finn is half asleep. He sees her as a vision of Princess Bubblegum, holding a sword, telling him to let love be his guide, and the flower responds. It grows, it expands, it becomes a tree that cracks open and reveals a new arm beneath. The healing comes not from the right love, but from love itself. genuinely offered. The show's thesis is that love, any love, genuinely felt, has the capacity to catalyze growth from a wound, not fix the wound, not erase the loss, grow something new. The new arm has a thorn in the palm. The grass blade's curse is still present, suggesting the healing is partial and the wound is not cleanly resolved. Both things are true. The transformation is real. The residue of the wound remains. That is not naive. That is hard-won, and it is the precise kind of comfort that the show keeps returning to. Not the comfort of resolution, but the comfort of something growing from what was lost. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The character of BMO deserves its own extended attention in this analysis, because BMO is the show's most concentrated expression of what it actually means to be comforting. BMO is a small game console-shaped robot. BMO lives with Finn and Jake, handles the household's gaming and communication needs, has a strong and eccentric imagination, and is voiced by Nikki Yang with a specific quality of gentle strangeness that makes every BMO line feel like a small gift. BMO's pronouns shift across the series depending on context, and the show treats this with characteristic casualness, not as an issue to be addressed, but as a fact of who BMO is, to be accepted and moved on from. What BMO represents in the show's emotional ecosystem is uncomplicated love, not romantic love, not parental love, not the complicated love between people who have shared history and unresolved tension. BMO loves Finn and Jake the way a home loves its inhabitants, steadily, without agenda, without keeping score. BMO is happy when they are happy, and worried when they are in trouble, and completely, constitutively, unable to be anything other than present. There is a version of the show without BMO, and it is a colder, less habitable world. The episode BMO Noir from Season 5 is the clearest expression of this. In the episode, BMO becomes the protagonist of a film noir mystery inside their own imagination, investigating the disappearance of a sock. The episode is played entirely straight. BMO narrates in classic noir voice. The world of the apartment takes on the atmosphere of a black and white detective film, and the mystery resolves in a way that is both absurd and touching. The episode is about BMO having an inner life that is complete and vivid and self-generating, independent of Finn and Jake's adventures. BMO does not need the external world to have a rich experience of existence. BMO contains worlds. This is reassuring in a specific and not immediately obvious way. BMO demonstrates that domesticity, being inside, being in the small space of daily life, being the quiet presence in the background of someone else's adventure, is not a lesser form of existence. It is its own form. It has its own dramas and mysteries and satisfactions. The show treats BMO's small apartment adventures with the same seriousness and visual craft it brings to Finn's world-spanning quests. The implicit message is that any life, lived with full attention and full imagination, is worthy of the same respect. This is part of why the show is so comfortable to fall asleep to. BMO, throughout the series, is essentially modeling the activity of inhabiting a quiet space while the world goes on around you. BMO plays games alone in the dark after everyone has gone to sleep. BMO sits with the small mechanics of domestic life. BMO is never lonely doing this. BMO is complete. The choice to make BMO the one who sings Time Adventure in the finale is deliberate and profound. Not Finn, not Jake, not Marceline, who has the most powerful and resonant singing voice in the show's universe. BMO, the smallest presence, with the softest voice, singing the show's ultimate thesis about time and memory and the permanence of what was real. To Jake, who is frightened, BMO sings it the way someone sings to comfort a child, not with power or grandeur, with gentleness, with proximity, with the specific intimacy of someone very close, very quiet, very present, in the middle of the night. And the song itself, Time Adventure, written by Rebecca Sugar specifically for the finale, the second song she contributed to the show after leaving to create Steven Universe, dedicated to showrunner Adam Muto, is structured as a lullaby. Its tempo is slow. Its harmonies are simple. Rebecca Sugar has said in a video on her TikTok that the title has hidden meanings. It is the show's own name rearranged. Adventure Time becomes Time Adventure. The adventure is time. The time is the adventure. The show is telling you something about what it has always been, right to the end. John DiMaggio, who voices Jake throughout the entire run of the series, has spoken publicly about recording the finale. He said that the last day they recorded, they had to do the final song that Rebecca Sugar wrote, and that he was a wreck when he had to sing it. DiMaggio is one of the most experienced and technically accomplished voice actors in animation. He voices Jake with a warmth and a humor and an ease that makes the character feel lived in a way that most animated characters do not. And he was a wreck recording a lullaby. That is the measure of what the show meant to the people who made it, and by extension, what it was able to mean to the people who watched it. The character of Marceline the Vampire Queen occupies a specific and necessary space in the show's emotional universe, and her presence is inseparable from why the show achieves what it achieves. Marceline is 1,000 years old. She is the only character in the show's main cast who was alive before the Mushroom War, which means she is the only character who carries the full weight of what was lost. She was there. She watched the world end. She watched Simon disappear. She survived. Across 1,000 years, everything that Ooh has thrown at people and civilizations and structures and relationships. She is the oldest, and she is also, in the specific emotional sense, the most wounded. The show is very careful about how it portrays Marceline's wound. It does not make her a tragic victim. It does not define her by her pain. Marceline, as voiced by Olivia Olson, is funny and chaotic and passionate and occasionally vicious and immensely creative and capable of enormous tenderness that she expresses sideways, through music, through unexplained acts of care, through the specific way she and Princess Bubblegum orbit each other across years of episodes before the show finally lets them acknowledge what they are to each other. The Stakes mini-series, which aired in November 2015 as part of the 7th season, 7 episodes beginning with Marceline the Vampire Queen and concluding with The Dark Cloud, is where the show does the full accounting of Marceline's history, her vampiric nature, her demon heritage, her relationship with her mother, what she has lost and chosen and survived. The song Everything Stays, which Rebecca Sugar returned to write and perform for this mini-series, the first of 2 songs she contributed after departing the show, is Marceline's mother singing to a young Marceline about the nature of change. Sugar performed the voice of Marceline's mother as well, bringing the song a specific intimate quality that comes from the same person, voicing both the mother and the memory of the mother. The song says, essentially, that things move and shift and grow, but they do not fully disappear. They stay, transformed. That song is the Stakes mini-series' version of Time Adventure, the same philosophical answer to the same philosophical problem. Things end, things change, but something stays. The show does not specify what stays, because the answer is different for every listener. For some people, it is memory. For some, it is love. For some, it is the specific quality of a person's presence that persists in you after they are gone. The song offers the idea. Without insisting on the content, it trusts you to fill it in with what you have lost. Marceline's comfort in the show comes specifically from her endurance. She is proof, walking and floating and playing her bass guitar and making red things that are not blood into food, that a person can survive 1,000 years of loss and not become hollow. She has her father's ambivalence and her mother's absence and Simon's disappearance and 1,000 years of watching things she loved change and end, and she is still here, still making music, still, despite herself, capable of love, still willing, when it comes to it, to hold Simon on the grass after Betty is gone and be present for whatever he is feeling, because presence is what she has learned matters across 1,000 years of discovering what does and does not survive. That endurance is not inspirational in the poster slogan sense. It does not feel like a message. It feels like a fact. Marceline is still here because surviving is what living things do, even when they have every reason not to. And watching a character embody persistence without making it into a speech, is its own quiet form of encouragement. The show's treatment of heroism is worth examining carefully because it is non-standard in a way that matters enormously to the show's emotional effect. Finn is explicitly identified as a hero. The show's universe has a concept of heroism that is taken seriously. There are books about it, codes of conduct, traditions, tests and trials, and heroes' manuals like the Enchiridion. The Enchiridion, recovered by Finn in the 5th episode of Season 1 on April 19th, 2010, after a series of trials on Mount Cragdor, is literally a hero's handbook. Finn completed tests of character to earn it, refusing to kill a neutral ant even when commanded to, showing mercy to an ogre after defeating him, returning the ogre's stolen dollar, because the heroic action was not combat, but fairness. The concept of righteous heroism is not ironic in OO, it is genuine. Finn believes in it completely, and the show, for most of its run, believes in it with him. But what the show does with heroism over time is not reinforce the conventional version of the concept. It complicates it. It shows Finn being wrong in ways that matter. It shows his convictions leading him astray. It shows the limits of the sword and shield approach to the world's problems, and most importantly, it shows him learning, slowly, painfully, with many failures along the way, that the version of heroism he was given as a young boy is not the only version available, and that the deeper version is harder and less legible, and cannot be expressed through combat. Finn's arc with Flame Princess, whom he falls for in the 3rd season, and whose relationship with him occupies much of seasons 3, 4 and 5, before ending in the season 5 episode Frost and Fire on January 13th, 2014, is the clearest early demonstration of this. Finn's approach to love, for most of their relationship, is the same as his approach to adventure. Identify the goal, pursue it with maximum commitment, do not stop until you get there. The show eventually makes clear that this is not love, it is pursuit. There is a difference. The breakup happens in part because Finn manipulated a situation between Flame Princess and the Ice King to generate conflict he could watch and enjoy, because the conflict was exciting and familiar to him. He was, without quite knowing it, treating her as an adventure rather than a person. The show is not subtle about what this means. The show never resolves this cleanly. Finn keeps getting things wrong. He keeps overreaching and misdirecting his energy and making choices that reflect his limitations rather than his values. And the show does not resolve this by having him grow into a perfect person. It resolves it by having Finn keep trying, by having him sit with his failures and find, inside himself, the capacity to keep moving. Not because the moving fixes anything, because it is the only honest response to being alive in a world that does not promise you anything. That decision, the decision to keep going anyway, is what the show is ultimately about. It is what Simon was doing when he sang the Cheers song. It is what Marceline does across 1,000 years of loss. It is what Princess Bubblegum does when she builds the Candy Kingdom from the biological remains of a devastated world. It is what BMO does when they sit alone in the dark playing games, quietly present, quietly alive. It is what the show itself does, every episode, for 8 years, insisting on colour and adventure and music and kindness and the specific and inexhaustible warmth of people who love each other. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a specific kind of villain that only certain shows can produce, which is the kind that makes you feel something complicated when you are supposed to feel afraid. The Lich is that kind of villain, and the way Adventure Time handles him is one of the reasons the show's universe feels as rich and comforting as it does. The Lich makes his first substantial appearance in the Season 2 finale, the 2-part episode Mortal Folly and Mortal Recoil, which aired on May 2nd, 2011. He is voiced by Ron Perlman. He is the embodiment of the Mushroom War's nuclear destruction, an ancient being of pure destructive intent, risen from the bomb, existing as a kind of concentrated avatar of everything that ended the old world. His design is skeletal and desiccated. His voice is deep and cold and carries what Perlman brings to every character who operates at the edge of the human, which is a specific gravity that makes the character feel ancient. The Lich does not make jokes. The Lich does not monologue. The Lich does one thing, which is pursue the obliteration of all life, because that is what he is. The show treats the Lich completely seriously. This is the point IGN critic Matt Fowler made when reviewing the episodes. The Lich is a real, grotesque villain inserted into the merely semi-dark world of Adventure Time. He is not a silly character with an evil plan. He is something closer to the nuclear war itself, the specific horror of an extinction event, given a face and a voice, and the capacity to act with intention. Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto, who storyboarded Mortal Folly, made a deliberate choice to strip away the comedy that Adventure Time typically maintains, even in its darkest moments. The Lich fight is played straight. The consequences are real. Princess Bubblegum is possessed, goes on a destructive rampage, and ends the episode severely wounded and de-aged to 13 years old. But here is what the show does with the Lich that is not standard villain handling. In the Season 6 premiere, after years of being an existential threat, the Lich is transformed. His physical body, destroyed and rebuilt and possessed and redestroyed across multiple seasons, is covered in healing blood from the explosion at the Crystal Citadel, and this blood turns him into a harmless infant who goes on to be adopted by Tree Trunks and Mr. Pig and named Sweet Pea. The most terrifying entity in the history of Ooh becomes a happy child with loving parents who have no idea what he used to be. The show does not play this for horror. It plays it for the specific tenderness of the idea that even the most destructive force in the universe, stripped of the conditions that made it destructive, is just another being trying to exist in the world. Sweet Pea goes on to appear in later episodes as a genuinely sweet and gentle kid who struggles with dark visions he does not understand and cannot control, who is trying to be good in a world where something terrible is encoded in his very existence. The Lich is still in there, somewhere, as a trauma that Sweet Pea carries without quite knowing what it is. And the show treats that, the child who carries the memory of destruction inside them without being that destruction, with complete seriousness and complete tenderness. That is what Adventure Time does with evil. It does not redeem it in the conventional sense. It does not argue that evil was misunderstood or that the villain was really good all along. It says something more specific and stranger, and in its way more comforting, which is that even the Lich, even the nuclear war-made flesh, can produce, under the right conditions, a child who wants to be good. Not because the evil was not real, because life insists. Even there is a scene in the Season 10 episode Bonnibel Bubblegum, which aired on September 17th, 2017, that most people who have watched it remember in pieces, and then find that the pieces add up to something they did not expect. The episode aired as the 4th episode of the final season, and it is what the show calls a background episode, a standalone that fills in history for one of the main characters without advancing the present-day plot. Bonnibel Bubblegum shows Princess Bubblegum's origin, how she came into being from a piece of gum that was part of a biological proto-organism called the Mother Gum in the ruins of the Mushroom War, how she built the Candy Kingdom, essentially by herself, from biological material and scientific knowledge, how she created the Candy People, how she lost a sibling, her brother Neddy, who was made from the same piece of gum, but who went inward rather than outward, who found peace in the roots of a tree and stayed there, and how she has been maintaining a civilization by herself, mostly by herself, for hundreds of years. The episode is devastating in a very quiet way. It is not dramatic. It does not have action. It is a character study of a person who built everything around herself to avoid feeling the specific loneliness of being the first of her kind and having no one to explain the world to her. Princess Bubblegum is brilliant and controlled and occasionally ruthless, and is the most powerful figure in Ooh by most measures. And the episode shows you that all of it, every achievement, every system, every safeguard, was built by a person who was fundamentally alone and was not sure if that would ever change. The episode's title card refers to Bonnibel, the name Marceline uses for her. The episode uses that name throughout. It is a very small thing, but it is the show being precise. This is not the episode about Princess Bubblegum the ruler, or even Princess Bubblegum the scientist. This is the episode about Bonnibel, which is the name of the person underneath the title. The comforting thing about this episode, and it is deeply comforting, for all that it is also deeply sad, is the specific comfort of being seen completely. The show has spent years building Princess Bubblegum as a character, and Bonnibel Bubblegum is the episode where it reaches all the way in and says, this is what she actually is. Not evil, not manipulative in the sinister sense, not cold by nature, just someone who has been carrying too much for too long and has built the carrying into an identity because the carrying was all she had control over. The Peabody Award that Adventure Time received noted the show's emotional complexity and its ability to speak to multiple audiences simultaneously. The episode Bonnibel Bubblegum is the clearest demonstration of that capacity. A child watching it sees the story of how the Candy Kingdom was made. An adult watching it sees the story of someone who built a life around their work because they could not trust that anyone would stay. Both readings are correct. Both coexist in the same 11 minutes without either cancelling the other. That double register, the story that works on the surface and the story that works at depth, is how the show earns its comfort across audiences and ages. It does not speak down to children, and it does not exclude them. It builds worlds that have enough room for whatever you bring to them. The show's treatment of the concept of heroism reaches its most complex expression, not in Finn's story, but in the character of the hero Billy, voiced throughout his appearances by Lou Ferrigno. Billy appears first in the Season 1 episode, His Hero, which aired on August 2nd, 2010, as the 25th episode of the first season. In this episode, Finn and Jake meet the legendary adventurer Billy, who is, according to them, the greatest warrior ever to have lived. He has a list of his accomplishments that Finn recites with the reverence of someone citing scripture. He once fought an evil ocean, slain a dragon, and climbed a mountain. He is Finn's conception of heroism made literal, the version of adventuring that Finn is trying to become. And when Finn and Jake find him, Billy has given up adventuring. He has concluded that violence does not solve anything, that the approach he has spent his life practicing is not actually good, and that the right thing to do is help people in small, practical ways, not through combat, but through acts of direct service. He is washing an old lady's house. He is growing vegetables. He is trying, in his later life, to be different from what he was. Finn's immediate response is to try to follow this example. He and Jake spend the episode helping people in non-violent ways, and it goes badly in the specific way that it would go badly for someone who has not yet developed the tools for that kind of help. Finn is good at fighting. He is not yet good at the other kinds of being good. He ends the episode going back to adventuring, essentially having learned that Billy's approach does not quite fit him yet, but the show has planted the idea that it might someday, and that growing into it is part of what growing up means. Billy returns in Billy's Bucket List, the final episode of Season 5, which aired July 14th, 2014. He is dead by then. The Lich possessed his body in The Lich, the Season 4 finale that aired October 22nd, 2012, and he appears to Finn as a constellation of stars in the sky to ask Finn to complete his bucket list. The things on the list are small: mend a tattered flag, defeat a fear, complete a few modest goals that Billy had set for himself and never gotten around to. And at the end, after Finn has done them, Billy reveals the real thing he had to tell him: your father is alive. The relationship between these two appearances of Billy, the great hero who gave up heroism, and the dead great hero who used his last message to tell his young admirer that his father exists, is one of the show's most careful pieces of character work. Billy in His Hero is teaching Finn something Finn is not ready to hear. Billy in Billy's Bucket List is the same lesson at a different angle. The things that matter are smaller and more specific than you think. The adventure is not always the grand quest. Sometimes the adventure is washing an old lady's house, or mending a flag, or telling a kid something his father cannot tell him himself. That is the heroism the show is ultimately endorsing, beneath all the sword fights and dungeon crawls and cosmic threats. The heroism of the small act, the heroism of showing up, the heroism of BMO singing Time Adventure to Jake, while the world fights its final battle outside, because Jake is frightened, and the thing Jake needs right now is someone beside him. Not a hero with a sword, a small robot with a song. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a version of the show's relationship with music that deserves its own sustained attention, because music in Adventure Time is not background, it is argument. The show has produced an unusual body of music across its 10 seasons, not incidental themes that accompany the action, but songs that are themselves the emotional evidence of what the characters are going through. Many of these songs were written by the show's creative team. The Fry song, which Marceline sings to her father in the Season 2 episode It Came from the Nightosphere, one of the show's first major explorations of Marceline's character, was written by Rebecca Sugar. It is a child's song about a parent who does not see her, performed with enough genuine feeling that it lands differently every time you hear it. The song is about abandonment, in the most literal sense. Marceline lists the things her father does, including sucking out her soul, and ends by asking if he even loves her. The comedy of the setup makes the emotional content land harder, not softer. The show knows what it is doing. Sugar wrote the majority of the show's early songs, including the Remember You duet from I Remember You, the songs in Simon and Marcy, Everything Stays for the Stakes miniseries, and Time Adventure for the finale. The body of work she produced for Adventure Time is, taken as a whole, one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of television scoring. Each song is specific to its character and its moment. None of them sound like they were written for a children's cartoon in the conventional sense. They sound like they were written by someone who had access to what the characters were actually feeling and chose the most precise musical form to express it. The show also commissioned music from its voice actors. Olivia Olson, who voices Marceline, is a professional singer, and the show used that capacity fully. Marceline's songs across the series are performed by Olson with a range that goes from punk rock to folk to something almost operatic in the Remember You duet. The character of Marceline is a musician in-universe, and the show treats this with the specificity of a show that understands what music is for, which is not just entertainment but processing. Marceline makes music out of grief and anger and longing, and watching her do it, watching the show render the act of turning feeling into song with visual and sonic care, is a specific kind of reassurance. The reassurance that the hard thing can be made into something. That feeling itself, however difficult, is material. The show's background score, composed by Tim Kiefer, operates in the same register. Kiefer's work across the run of the series is understated in the best sense. It never competes with the story, never tells you how to feel, but it does something subtler and more important, which is create an ambient field of warmth and safety that the characters move through. The adventure episodes have scores that support the action without dramatizing it. The quiet episodes have scores that deepen the silence rather than filling it. The emotional peak moments, the finale of I Remember You, the crown sequence in Simon and Marcy, the reunion of Simon and Marceline in Come Along With Me, are scored with restraint because the events themselves carry the weight and the music's job is to hold space around them rather than interpret them. This restraint is the rarest quality in television scoring and the most comforting. Nothing is worse, when you are trying to feel something real from a piece of storytelling, than music that tells you what to feel before you have had time to feel it yourself. Adventure Time trusts its audience to bring their own responses to its most important moments. It trusts you, and being trusted is comforting. The show's final seasons, seasons 8, 9, and 10, which aired between 2016 and 2018, have a specific quality of patience and space that the earlier seasons did not quite achieve. The show had always been good, but in these seasons, it became something more comfortable, in the specific sense that a person becomes more comfortable with themselves as they age. It stopped explaining itself. It trusted the world it had built and moved through it with a confidence that translated, for the audience, into a quality of rest. The season 10 episode 17, which aired on December 17th, 2017, is Finn's birthday episode. He is turning 17. The episode is quiet and strange and almost entirely plotless in the conventional sense. Finn wanders through the day, has various encounters, thinks about getting older, ends the episode by saying he is okay with whatever comes next. It is 11 minutes of a cartoon character doing the work of accepting the passage of time. And it works because the show has spent 17 years of Finn's life, 10 seasons of our time, establishing exactly who he is and what he has survived, and what aging means for someone who started as a naive and fearless 12-year-old in a world that needed heroes. 17 is not one of the show's most discussed episodes. It does not have a dramatic set piece or a major revelation. It is just Finn, on his birthday, figuring out what it means to be growing up. And the fact that the show made space for that episode, in its final season, with limited time left, is itself a statement about what the show believed mattered. Not the plot, the person, the specific, unspectacular work of being a person who is learning how to be at peace with their own life. This is the register in which Adventure Time is most profoundly comforting. Not the episodes with big emotional payoffs or major reveals, or the moments that get clipped and shared and discussed in analysis videos. The episodes where the show simply exists with its characters in the texture of their daily lives, uncertain and specific and alive, and trusts that you will find something in that existence that resonates with your own. The Season 9 episode Catch Up, which aired in 2018, is an episode about Marceline and BMO spending time together after the events of the Elements miniseries. They tell each other what happened to them while they were separated. They get things slightly wrong, they embellish, they comfort each other with the telling. The episode is animated in a distinctive style that shifts between Marceline's version of events and BMO's version of events, each rendered in a different aesthetic language. It is one of the most technically inventive episodes the show ever produced, and it is also, at its core, just two friends catching each other up on what they missed. Two friends, in the quiet, being glad the other one is there. That is the show at its most fundamental. Two people, in the quiet, glad. The visual world of Adventure Time is inseparable from the show's emotional register, and it deserves careful attention in a video about why the show feels the way it feels. The Land of Ooo is drawn in a style influenced by independent comic art. Background designer Ghost Shrimp, one of the key visual architects of the series, who returned for the finale after officially leaving during Season 4, established a visual grammar that combined the flat, clean shapes of children's illustration with a painterly quality of light and atmosphere unusual for Cartoon Network in 2010. The sunsets in Ooo are extravagant, the skies are specific. The water has a quality of luminosity that suggests the world is lit from within. The show also made unusual choices in its animation approach for specific episodes. The Season 6 episode Food Chain was written, storyboarded, and directed by Japanese anime director Masaki Yuasa, and animated entirely by his studio, Science Saru. The Season 7 episode, Bad Jubies, directed by Kirsten Lepore, was rendered in stop motion. The Season 5 episode, A Glitch, was written and directed by Irish filmmaker David O'Reilly, and features his distinctive three-dimensional animation style. The show was not trying to be visually consistent, it was trying to be visually alive. Each of these experiments brought a different visual language into the world of Ooo, and the willingness to accommodate them reflects the same generosity of spirit that the show extends to its characters. The Tree Fort interior is one of the most carefully maintained environments in the show. Every season, it is essentially the same: the couch, the stairs, the training room, the kitchen, BMO's area, and the familiarity of it is a design choice. The show wants you to recognize the Tree Fort the way you recognize your own home. When the characters return to the Tree Fort after a difficult adventure, the visual relief is palpable and deliberate. The colors soften, the composition settles. The night sequences in the show deserve particular attention in the context of a video designed for people falling asleep. Adventure Time's nighttime aesthetic is extraordinary. The show renders darkness not as the absence of color, but as its own color palette. Deep blues and purples, pinpoints of starlight, the warm circles of candlelight or firelight in windows and hearths and campsites. The nighttime in Ooo feels inhabited in a way that is immensely calming. It does not feel threatening. It feels like the world after the day has quieted, like the particular quality of stillness that descends when the activity stops and the steady presence of things reasserts itself. The show's music operates at a register that is consistently and almost structurally reassuring. Composer Tim Kiefer produced the majority of the score, and the instrumentation tends toward the acoustic, guitar, piano, light percussion, occasional strings, with harmonic choices that avoid the kinds of dramatic tension that would alert a sleeping listener's nervous system. The score knows where it is being used. In the quiet episodes, in the scenes of characters sitting together and talking, in the transitions between adventure and homecoming, the music does something very specific, which is to suggest that whatever just happened, you are now in a safe place where the emotional temperature is low. Combined with the visual grammar, this creates a sensory environment that is almost architecturally comforting. You are watching a show that has been designed at multiple levels simultaneously to feel like rest. There is something to be said about the show's handling of Finn's origins that connects directly to the question of why the show feels comforting to a very specific kind of person, which is someone who has ever felt like they do not quite belong where they are, or who has wondered if the world they are living in is really theirs. The mystery of Finn's humanity, the fact that he is, for most of the show's run, apparently the last human in Oo, a single person of his species in a world of candy people and vampires and shape-shifting dogs, is one of the show's organizing questions. The show treats his humanness not as a superpower, but as a specific kind of loneliness. He is the only one of his kind. He has no one to compare notes with. He has no cultural context for what he is, or where he came from. He was found as an infant in the woods and raised by dogs and became, through that raising, whatever he is. The Islands miniseries, which aired in January and February 2017 as part of the 8th season, is the show's answer to the question of where the humans went. Finn, Jake, BMO, and Susan Strong travel to a group of islands far from Oo and discover that the humans did not disappear. They chose to leave. They built a civilization on these islands, insulated from the rest of Oo, governed by a system designed to keep them safe from the dangers of the outside world. The system worked, after a fashion. The humans are still there, and what they have built, in their effort to be safe, is a world that is safe and small and sealed, a place where the primary value is the preservation of life, and the primary cost is the restriction of it. Finn's mother Minerva lives on the islands. She built much of their medical infrastructure. She chose safety. She is not a villain. She is someone who experienced the loss of her son and the loss of her husband, and decided that the thing she could do, the thing she could control, was to make the world as safe as possible for the people still in it. The show understands her decision completely and does not condemn it, and also makes clear that Finn, who was raised in the ruins and the adventures of Oo, cannot stay. The question the Islands miniseries is actually asking is one of the most fundamental questions in the show's universe. What do you owe to safety, and what does safety cost you? The humans built a world where they would not die in the way Finn's world kills people, and the price they paid for that is the smallness of it. They cannot go out, they cannot grow, they live in a beautiful, functional, well-maintained terrarium. Finn chooses Oo. He chooses the ruins and the adventures and the specific quality of aliveness that comes from a world that does not protect you from itself. This is not presented as obviously correct. The show knows it costs something. It knows that Finn, in returning to Oo, is choosing to be the last human out there. Again, still, always, choosing the loneliness of that in exchange for the particular freedom of living in a world that is open to the horizon. That choice, the choice of openness over safety, of the difficult world over the protected one, is the choice the show itself has always made. Adventure Time could have been a show that protected its audience from the hard things. It could have been a show about a boy and his dog having adventures in a silly magical world where everything resolves happily. That was one version of the show that could have existed. The people who made it chose the other version. They chose to set it in the ruins. They chose to make the Ice King a tragedy. They chose to give Finn a father who does not know his name. They chose to let the grief be real. And the show has the same argument for its own existence that Finn has for returning to Oo. The openness is worth it. The difficulty of a world that does not promise you anything is worth it for the specific kind of aliveness that only that world can produce. The show's relationship with its own audience across generations is one of the things that makes it singular in the history of children's television. Adventure Time premiered in 2010 and ran until 2018. The children who watched it at 7 years old when it first aired were 15 or 16 when it ended. The adults who found it in the early years as something strange and weirdly affecting continued with it through a decade of their lives. The show aged with both audiences simultaneously, becoming more complex and more patient and more willing to sit inside difficult territory as its viewers became more capable of handling it. This parallel aging is visible in the show's structure across seasons. The first season has the specific energy and accessibility of something designed for young children. The adventures are clear, the stakes are modest, the comedy is broad. The 6th and 7th seasons have the energy of something designed for an older audience, more interior, more interested in psychology and history, more comfortable with unresolved tension and unhappy moments that do not get fixed. The show does not make a dramatic announcement about this shift. It simply changes as the people making it and the people watching it change, and the show's willingness to follow that evolution, rather than freeze at a profitable early stage, is one of the most unusual things about it. The lasting cultural footprint of Adventure Time is not reducible to its ratings or its awards or its critical reception, though all of those are real and significant. The show's lasting footprint is in the specific quality of the memories that people carry from it. There are people for whom the Cheers sequence in Simon and Marcy is one of the most emotionally significant things they have experienced from a piece of media. There are people for whom the ending of I Remember You changed how they thought about dementia and grief. There are people for whom BMO is a meaningful figure, not just a beloved character, a model for a kind of gentleness and self-sufficiency and uncomplicated love that they have tried to bring into their own lives. These are not normal claims to make about a children's cartoon. They are the kind of claims that usually attach to literature or to the kinds of art that society designates as serious. Adventure Time made them possible by refusing to accept the designation that children's animation was not serious, and by insisting, across a decade and 283 episodes, that the things children experience are real, the things children feel are real, and the art made for children deserves the same commitment to honesty and craft as any other art. The Rolling Stone profile of Pendleton Ward from 2014 described him as having created one of the biggest cult hits on television, almost despite himself, a man who preferred to work at home with the lights off and the curtains closed, and who found the show's success almost oppressive. The show he made is one of the warmest and most sociable things in the history of children's television. That gap between the creator and the creation, between the man who found daily human interaction exhausting and the show that makes millions of people feel less alone, is itself part of why the show is what it is. Ward put his interiority into the show. He put the part of himself that prefers the lights off and the curtains closed, that would rather be at home than in a room full of people, that finds peace in small private things. He put all of that in, and it became warmth for the people watching. His specific way of being alone in the world became company for other people who feel alone in theirs. That is the alchemy that makes great art, not the translation of a comfortable experience into comfortable entertainment, the transformation of a specific and particular inner life into something that reaches other specific and particular inner lives across the enormous distance between one person's private experience and another's. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one more thing to say about what Adventure Time is before this video comes to its end. It is something the show says about its own nature in the finale's framing device that does not get discussed enough. BMO is the king of Ooh 1,000 years after Finn and Jake. BMO tells Shermie and Beth the story of what happened. BMO is old, and the things BMO keeps in their small dwelling, the relics of the people who used to be there, are the objects of the show's emotional universe preserved in miniature. They are mementos. They are the material form of memory. What the show is saying, in this image, is that BMO remembers. That is what BMO does with 1,000 years. BMO keeps the story. BMO carries the story forward, so that when a cat person and a dog person find a rusted mechanical arm in a field and want to know what it is, there is someone who can tell them. The story exists because someone chose to hold on to it. This is the show's final statement about what stories are for, not entertainment in the shallow sense, preservation. The story of Finn and Jake and Marceline and Simon and Bubblegum and BMO exists in the show's own mythology because BMO chose to keep it, kept the guitar, kept the glasses, kept the objects that anchor the story to the physical world, and because when asked, BMO told it, truthfully, with love, to people who needed to know where a rusted arm came from. That is what this video is doing too, in its small way, keeping the story, telling it truthfully, to people who are lying in the dark and need to know why the thing they love feels the way it feels. The answer is, because the people who made it kept something real inside it, and real things persist. That is the whole argument. Real things persist. The love that Simon felt for Marcy persists in the song she sings to an ice king who cannot remember writing it. The warmth that Pendleton Ward could not express to the world directly persists in Lumpy Space Princess's absurd and endless capacity for feeling. The care that Rebecca Sugar put into Marceline persists in every note of "Remember you and everything stays and time adventure. You and I will always be back then." The show kept something real, and the real thing persists. And what you feel when you watch it in the dark is not manufactured comfort. It is contact. It is the specific and irreplaceable experience of being reached by something that was made with genuine human feeling and that travels across whatever distance to find you in the place where you are. The candles are low. Jake is on the couch. BMO is playing in the quiet. The sky above the tree fort is the color of a day that is ending without apology. You can rest now. It is about the rhythm of the show. Each episode is approximately 11 minutes long. This brevity is part of the show's design, and it produces a very specific narrative rhythm. Things happen quickly, but nothing is rushed. There is always time for a moment to breathe before the plot requires the next thing. The show understands the value of the held image, the camera resting on a character's face for an extra second, the landscape shot that does not immediately cut away, the pause after a line of dialogue that lets the line settle. These pauses are intentional. They are the show asking you to stay present with what just happened before moving on to what happens next. For someone falling asleep, this rhythm is almost meditative. The stories unfold without the jarring urgency of action television. Even in the show's most intense sequences, the visual and narrative grammar stays grounded. The show does not use shock cuts. It does not use sudden loud music stings. It trusts that what it is showing you is compelling enough without the additional manipulation of sudden volume change or rapid editing. That trust is, in itself, comforting. Being trusted is comforting. Being given a story that does not condescend to you, that treats your capacity for engagement as something to rely on rather than compensate for. That feels like being seen. The relationship between Princess Bubblegum and Marceline is one of the most carefully constructed slow burns in the history of animated television, and it matters to this analysis not primarily as a romance story, but as an illustration of what the show believes about the kind of love that persists. The two characters circle each other from early in the series, with a charge that the show does not name for many seasons. There are references throughout to a shared history. They clearly knew each other well, clearly had some kind of falling out, clearly still carry something for each other that neither has found a clean way to put down. In I Remember You, the song Marceline tries to share with the Ice King begins with words addressed to Bubblegum directly, acknowledging that Bubblegum is trying to keep her out. That is not language you write for two characters who were merely acquainted. That is language that carries a full history in 3 words. The show was restricted, in its early seasons, in how explicitly it could portray a queer romantic relationship between 2 female characters. This is documented and confirmed by the show's creative team. What the show did instead was build the emotional truth of the relationship across years of oblique references, charged silences, and moments that mean more than their surface suggests. Marceline calls Princess Bubblegum by her first name, Bonibel or Bonnie, when speaking to her directly, a detail the show flags as significant in analyses of the show's character grammar. The first name basis is a remnant of a closer time, a time the show keeps just off screen for seasons, letting the viewer sense its weight without showing it directly. Come Along With Me finally lets them be explicit. Marceline and Princess Bubblegum share a kiss during the finale. It is not presented as a dramatic revelation. It is presented as a thing that was always true, finally being allowed to be seen. Adam Muto confirmed in interviews that the outline for the scene merely called for the two characters to have a moment, and that the storyboard artist responsible for the sequence, Hannah K. Nystrom, was given creative latitude to develop what that moment looked like. What she developed was a kiss and a look between the two of them that contains the whole weight of their shared history. The ending of their story is comforting, not because it is a happy ending in the conventional sense, but because it represents the resolution of a long and patient truth. The show waited. It built the foundation across years, layer by layer, with care and with trust that the audience would be carrying it forward. And when it was finally allowed to say what it had always been saying, the effect was not a surprise. It was a recognition, of course. It was always this. That quality of recognition is itself a form of comfort. The feeling that what you sensed was real, that the show was not teasing you or misleading you. It was being honest with you the whole time, within the limits of what it was permitted. And the patience of that honesty, years of it, is one of the most generous things a show can give an audience. The show's treatment of Simon Petrikov's restoration in Come Along With Me is where the comfort of Adventure Time becomes most precise and most difficult to describe without dissolving into sentiment. In the finale, Simon is finally restored. Betty, his fiancée, who travelled through time in the season 5 episode Betty to try to save him and ended up trapped in increasingly desperate attempts to free him from the crown, sacrifices herself by fusing with Golb, the show's ultimate antagonist, in order to remove the crown's curse. The crown reverts to its original form. Betty puts it on. Her truest wish is to protect Simon. Simon is freed. He sits on the grass in the aftermath, without the crown, with Marceline beside him. He is himself again. He is Simon Petrikov. He is old and confused and mourning Betty, and seeing Marceline clearly, as himself, for the first time in 1,000 years. The show does not make this a triumphant moment. It is quiet, and slightly stunned, and tender, in the specific way that things are tender when they are fragile. Simon is real again, but Betty is gone, and he is sitting with Marceline on the grass, and she is holding him, and he is finding out what it costs to be restored. This is not a comfortable ending in the conventional sense. It is not a fix. Simon does not get his 1,000 years back. What Simon gets is the truth of his situation, without the crown's distortion. He gets to be sad about the right things. He gets to know what he lost. And Marceline is there. That is all. She is there. She has always been there. She will keep being there. The show does not need to articulate what that means. It holds the image. That holding, that willingness to sit in the aftermath without rushing to resolve it, is what the show has always done with its hardest material. Not fixed it, not explained it, sat with it, and the sitting is the comfort, not the resolution, the company. The series finale aired on September 3rd, 2018, to what Wikipedia describes as universal acclaim. It was viewed by 920,000 viewers during its premiere, a sharp drop from the show's peak audiences, reflecting the erratic airing schedule of the final seasons and the changes in how audiences consumed television by 2018. But the critical reception was unambiguous. People who watched it felt, by all accounts, that it was the right ending. Not a perfect ending in the sense of resolving every thread, a right ending in the sense of being true to what the show had always been. Adventure Time's influence on the generation of animated shows that followed it is substantial and documented. Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, and Over the Garden Wall, all shows that emerged in Adventure Time's wake, and that share its willingness to take animation seriously as a medium for emotional complexity, are in conversation with what Adventure Time made possible. Rebecca Sugar took specific things from her years on Adventure Time: the freedom to work from personal experience, the commitment to earned emotional weight, the understanding that children are sophisticated audiences who deserve sophisticated stories, and used them as foundations for Steven Universe, which became its own landmark in the history of animated television. Patrick McHale, who was the creative director of Adventure Time before leaving to make Over the Garden Wall, brought the same sensibility to his own work: the willingness to sit inside sadness, the trust that beauty and grief belong in the same frame. What Adventure Time specifically made possible was the cultural permission for children's animated shows to be about grief and loss and impermanence and mental illness and the weight of history, and to still be for children, not in spite of those subjects, because of them, because children experience grief and loss and impermanence and mental illness in their families, in their own minds, in the world they are growing up in, and they deserve stories that acknowledge those experiences, rather than pretending they do not exist. The show earned a Peabody Award, 8 Primetime Emmy Awards, and 3 Annie Awards. Novelist Lev Grossman compared it publicly to his experience of watching his father disappear into Alzheimer's. Lev Grossman said this about a children's cartoon. He was not being metaphorical or hyperbolic. He was describing the specific effect of a piece of storytelling that was honest enough to reach him in his specific grief. That is the measure of what the show achieved. The Simon and Marcy episode of Season 5 was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Short-Format Animation at the 65th Primetime Emmy Awards. It lost to a Mickey Mouse short. The nomination was real. The episode is real. Rebecca Sugar's goodbye to the show is preserved in every frame of it and will be there for anyone who watches it, now or 100 years from now. None of that happened because the show was trying to be important. It happened because the show was trying to be honest. Pendleton Ward wanted to make a show about the emotion of feeling happy and sad at the same time. Rebecca Sugar wanted to put her own life into Marceline. Tom Kenny found Simon Petrikov's terrified, dignified voice inside the same instrument he used to voice the Ice King's absurd chaos, and drew out a performance that made a novelist think of his father dying. Adam Muto kept the show running from Season 5 through Season 10, kept it honest and strange and alive, and Rebecca Sugar dedicated Time Adventure to him. The whole enterprise is made of people who cared too much to do anything other than their best. The finale of the show opens in the distant future of the Adventure Time universe. 1,000 years have passed since the events of the series. A cat-like being named Shermie and her companion Beth, a distant descendant of Jake and Lady Rainicorn, find a rusted mechanical arm in a field and seek out the king of Oo, an elderly BMO, now the sovereign of something, to find out what it is. BMO tells them the story. The story is the story of the show. This framing device does something precise and important. It says, these events have already happened. This is history. The people in this story are gone, or changed, or have moved on to lives we will not be shown, but the story persists. BMO remembers it. Someone kept it. And in BMO's modest, gently illuminated space, surrounded by relics, among them objects from the life of the show, the story exists as a preserved thing. You and I will always be back then. The finale ends, not with a dramatic moment, but with a series of vignettes showing where characters are, how they are, what they are doing now. Finn, older, with his mechanical arm, has found his place in Oo and is good and capable and continuing. Jake is with Lady and their pups. Marceline and Princess Bubblegum are together. BMO is the king of Oo. Ice King is Simon, finding his way back to himself, finding his way to mourning. No fanfare, no swelling orchestra telling you how to feel, just the characters, in the aftermath, continuing, living the lives the show gave them, past the point where we can see them. The adventure does not end with the camera, it just goes on without us. That is the last thing the show tells you, in the gentlest possible way, that the world it built, the people in it, the love between them, the specific quality of the life they made in the ruins, does not stop when the screen goes dark. It just continues somewhere you are not watching. And that is not loss. That is the natural state of things you love. They go on being real even after you have stopped watching them. They go on being real even after you fall asleep. When you fall asleep listening to Adventure Time, you are spending time in a world that was made with love by people who were also trying to survive their own version of the ruins. A world that was built out of grief and warmth and the specific human need to make something beautiful out of what is broken. A world where a man in an ice crown sings the Cheers theme to a sick child in the dark, and a small robot plays games alone at midnight, and two best friends eat sandwiches on a cliff above the ruins of everything that was before them, and none of them are pretending the ruins are not there. And none of them are talking about the ruins, because the point has never been the ruins. The point has always been the sandwiches. The point has always been being alive, right now, in the presence of someone who knows your name. This is what Adventure Time is. Not a safe world, a real one, in the specific sense that really matters, which is that the feelings inside it are real, and the people making them felt real things, and the encounters between those real feelings and the experience of watching them are real encounters, real contact, the kind of contact that leaves you feeling, when you put it down, that you were not alone. The show does not promise you safety. It does not tell you the world will always be okay, or that the people you love will not change, or that what is lost will come back. It does not make those promises because it knows they are not true, and you know they are not true, and making them would be a kind of insult to both of you. What it does instead is sit with you. It is Simon in the ruins, singing. It is Marceline at her bass guitar, turning the saddest thing she knows into music. It is BMO in the dark, playing alone, complete. It is Jake on the couch at the end of the day, telling you that whatever happened, you can put it down for a while, and it will still be there in the morning. You can rest now. It is okay to rest. That is why the show feels the way it feels. That is why people queue it up at 2 in the morning when they cannot sleep, or when they are sick, or when they need something that will not ask anything of them, but will still be there. Because Adventure Time learned how to be there, how to be present without demanding presence in return, how to tell stories about loss and grief and the passage of time in a voice that is warm and patient and completely, constitutively incapable of abandoning you before the episode ends. The world of Ooh was built from ruin. The characters who live in it survived things they should not have survived. The music playing underneath them knows that and refuses to make it smaller than it is, and also refuses to make it larger than is true. The sky above the tree fort at sunset is the specific colour of a day that is ending without apology, and Finn and Jake sit on the porch and eat their sandwiches and watch the ruins on the horizon, and they do not talk about the ruins because they know what the ruins are, and they have made their peace with living in the middle of them. That peace, that specific and hard-won and non-naive peace with the fact of living in a broken world, is what Adventure Time passes on to you when you watch it. Not as a lesson, as an atmosphere. You breathe it in over many episodes and many seasons, and it settles into your nervous system at a depth that arguing or explaining cannot reach. And when you are lying in the dark and you need it, it is there. It has always been there. Simon sings. Marceline floats. BMO plays in the quiet. The candles in the tree fort are low. Jake is on the couch. And the show holds all of it. The whole lit and coloured and carefully made universe, open to you for as long as you need it. That is the adventure. That was always the adventure. Not what happens when you go out into the world. What you find when you come back from it. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next. There is a scene in Varmints, Season 7, Episode 2, which aired on November 3rd, 2015, that most people remember as a quiet, low-stakes episode about underground creatures eating pumpkins and then move past. But nothing in that description captures what the episode actually is. It is one of the most honest depictions of what it looks like when two people who once loved each other have to find their way back through the specific damage that time and distance and changed circumstance have done between them. Marceline comes to the Candy Kingdom late at night. She is flying casually through the dark, humming to herself, humming the first few bars of I'm Just Your Problem, the song she wrote 4 seasons earlier, the song she sang at Princess Bubblegum in a cave, the song that almost opened a magic door because it was almost completely true. She is going to see someone she considers a friend. She knocks on the window of what she thinks is that person's bedroom. The wrong person is in the bed. Princess Bubblegum has been deposed, removed from her own kingdom, exiled to a cabin by a lake, and Marceline did not know. She finds out from the wrong person, in the wrong room, 2 months after the fact. She is not just surprised, she is hurt. Not because she was kept out of the loop about kingdom politics, because Bubblegum did not tell her, because 2 months passed and Marceline was not there, was not invited to be there, was not given the chance. Think about what that actually means. Marceline, who is approximately 1,000 years old, who has spent centuries learning to protect herself from abandonment, who has had exactly 2 significant parental figures in her life, and lost both of them in different ways. She went 2 months without knowing her most important person was hurting, and when she finds out, her response is not hurt feelings performed for the audience. It is a specific, recognizable anger, the anger of someone who wanted to help and was not allowed to. The episode has them chasing underground creatures through tunnels that Marceline used to spray paint when she and Bubblegum were younger, when they used to hang out in the dark beneath the Candy Kingdom and be nobody except themselves. They find old graffiti, a bat Marceline drew, a tag in Bubblegum's careful, precise handwriting that says, "Marceline made me write this, Bonnibel Bubblegum." Marceline laughs, seeing it. She says Bubblegum's handwriting has not changed at all, still as prissy and prim as. She stops herself, looks at Bubblegum's face, says, "I like your handwriting. I think it's really pretty." This is the most important moment in the episode, not the varmint fight, not the emotional confession that comes next. This, the moment where Marceline starts to say something that would have stung, catches herself mid-sentence, and chooses a different thing to say, chooses something true and also kind. Chooses to see the handwriting as beautiful instead of using it as a small weapon. That is what 8 seasons of character development looks like in a single self-correction. And then Bubblegum, deep in the tunnel with varmints approaching, says the thing the episode has been building toward. She says she lost her hat and her home and her people. She says she tried so hard. She says she thought that if she shut everything out and focused on work, it would be okay, but all she managed to do was push everyone away. She pushed Marceline away. She is sorry, and Marceline, who has every right to be angrier than she is, who has carried the weight of this particular rift for longer than the show has shown us, just says they should probably not get buried under a metric ton of rubble first. The episode ends with Bubblegum exhausted, finally allowed to be tired after months of keeping the vigil of self-sufficiency alone. Marceline tells her to sleep, says she will watch the pumpkin patch, promises to wake her in 15 minutes, and does not wake her, because this is what love actually looks like, not the grand gesture, not the resolved confession, but staying awake in the dark so that someone else can rest, being the person who is there so they do not have to be alone. 15 minutes becomes the whole night. This is the comfort of varmints. Not that the problem is resolved. The varmints are still out there. The Candy Kingdom is still usurped. The years of difficulty between these 2 people are still in the dark with them, but Marceline is watching. That is enough for right now. The show knows that enough is sometimes exactly enough. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is something that happens to a show when it trusts its audience completely, and Adventure Time demonstrates it in the most sustained way of any animated series in television history. The trust is in the gaps. Adventure Time, more than almost any other show, tells its most important stories in the space between things, in the looks that last a beat too long, in the jokes that land on something real, in the episodes that are structured around something completely absurd, and which turn out to be about something completely human. The show trusts you to feel the weight of these gaps. It does not fill them in. It does not annotate its own silences. When Rebecca Sugar wrote, "I'm Just Your Problem," which she has said was written in the aftermath of a personal breakup, and was, by her own account, hard for her to write, she was giving Marceline a song that worked in 2 registers at once. On the surface, it is a punk-inflected rock ballad of grievance. Underneath, it is a confession, the door that the group is trying to open in What Was Missing. Season 3, Episode 10, aired September 26, 2011. Written and storyboarded by Adam Muto and Rebecca Sugar, only responds to honesty. It begins to open when Marceline sings the true thing, and the true thing, buried under the anger and the "I'm just your problem" and the "it's like I'm not even a person, am I?" The true thing is that she wants to be seen by this specific person in this specific way. She wants not to be a problem, but a person. She wants to matter. The door begins to swing open. Then Marceline catches herself and closes off again, and the door stops, because the full truth is even more than she has said, and she is not ready for it yet. The show is not ready for it yet either. The show waited 7 more seasons to let the full truth land, and when it did, in a kiss in the finale, in an epilogue of two people choosing each other. It landed with the weight of everything that had been held back across all that time. The comfort of this slow revelation is almost impossible to articulate without sounding abstract, but try to feel it instead. You have been watching two people circle each other for 8 years of television. You have watched them be too guarded and too proud and too busy and too scared. You have watched them find their way back and lose it again and find it again. You have watched the handwriting in the tunnel. You have watched Marceline keep watch over the pumpkin patch. You have watched the shirt that Bubblegum kept in her closet, smelling it in private. The shirt Marceline gave her, which she held onto through everything, and then they kiss. And it is not a surprise. It is an arrival. The arrival has been coming for so long that when it gets there, the feeling is not shock, it is recognition. Of course, this was always going to be here. The show was always pointing toward this. Every piece of evidence was always accumulating toward this single moment of confirmation. That is the comfort of long-form storytelling done right. Not resolution, confirmation. The confirmation that what you felt was real, that what the show was building was real, that the long patience of watching two people find their way to each other across centuries and seasons, and 280-something episodes was not wasted patience, but the necessary patience. The waiting was the point. The waiting was what made the arrival mean something immeasurable. There is a kind of world building that exists purely in the texture of daily life, and Adventure Time is its master. The Candy Kingdom is populated by candy people who have specific jobs and specific problems, and specific personality traits that have nothing to do with any given episode's plot. The Ice Kingdom has penguins who have internal politics that are occasionally glimpsed and never explained. The Fire Kingdom has ceremonies. Lumpy Space, home of Lumpy Space, Princess, voiced by Pendleton Ward himself, in a register of aggrieved teenage melodrama that he described as coming from somewhere very specific in his own emotional experience, has its own complicated social hierarchies, that Lumpy Space Princess is perpetually either fleeing or performing. None of this is necessary. None of it is required for any plot. It is there because the world of Ooh is treated by everyone who makes it as real, as a place that exists when the camera is not on it, as a place where things keep happening in the background of other things, as a world that is too large and too alive to be fully captured by the episodes that show it. This approach to world building creates a specific type of comfort, the comfort of a world that does not require you to be watching it in order to exist. You can look away, you can fall asleep, and when you come back, the world is still there, still running, still full of candy people going about their business, and penguins having their arguments, and the tree fort sitting on the edge of the Candy Kingdom, with smoke coming from the chimney. Smoke from the chimney. That detail alone, a background detail, present in nearly every establishing shot of the tree fort across 10 seasons, does more for the comfort of the show than almost any plot event. It says, someone is home, something is burning, someone lit that fire at some point today. The tree fort is lived in, it is warm. This is the most fundamental requirement of a comfort space, reduced to a single line of smoke against a sky full of floating islands and magic light. Someone is home. The show's relationship with death is worth examining carefully, because it is unusual and because it is central to the show's capacity for comfort. Adventure Time does not pretend that characters cannot die. The series has real deaths, real losses, real moments where something that was alive is no longer alive, and the show does not flinch from this. Prismo, the Wishmaster, who lives in the time room and who becomes one of the show's most beloved supporting presences, dies in a Season 6 storyline. Billy, the legendary hero who serves as Finn's idol across multiple seasons, is killed by the Lich. Fern, the grass entity made from the combination of Finn's grass sword and the Finn sword, who serves as Finn's dark reflection and eventual companion, dies in the finale, in Finn's arms, and the moment is real, and it is sad, and the show does not soften it. But the show does something with death that most shows do not do. It does not treat death as an ending. It treats it as a change of state. Simon and Marcy demonstrates this most clearly. The Simon Petrikov who exists in the flashback, the careful, kind, bespectacled antiquarian who sang the Cheers theme song in the ruins of post-apocalyptic Los Angeles to keep his mind intact, is gone. He did not die in any conventional sense, but he is gone. The Ice King is not him. The Ice King is something that grew in the space where he used to be, like a plant growing in an abandoned structure, using the structure as its substrate but becoming something entirely different. And yet what Simon was is not gone. It is there in Marceline's memory. It is there in the letter he wrote before he could not write anymore. It is there in the Cheers theme song, which Simon chose because it was a song about belonging, about going somewhere that knows your name, that is always glad you came, and which he sang because on some level, even at the end of his coherence, he understood that the thing he was losing was exactly that, a place that knows your name. That is what Simon lost. That is what he sang to protect, and Marceline has been, for 1,000 years, the keeper of it. She is the person who still knows his name, the person who is still glad he came, and the Ice King, who does not remember any of this, keeps returning to her anyway, keeps finding her, keeps wanting to be near her, because what remains of Simon, the deepest residue, below all the ice and the beard and the strange obsessions, still knows, in whatever way a ruined mind can know anything, that she is where he belongs. This is the show's understanding of what loss actually is. Not disappearance, transformation into something that still carries the shape of what was lost, even when the shape is unrecognizable. The arm becomes a flower, the flower becomes fern, fern becomes a seed, the seed becomes a tree, the tree grows for 1,000 years and becomes the tallest thing in U. Simon becomes the Ice King. The Ice King stumbles back to Marceline. Marceline keeps his name. This understanding is comforting, not because it is empirically verifiable, but because it is an extremely humane way to sit with what happens to the things we love when they change beyond recognition. They do not disappear. They just need someone to keep their name, to be the person who still knows who they were, to visit them in whatever strange form they now take, and love that form too, while also loving the memory of the form that was before, to call them Simon once in a while, to show them a photograph and say, this was you. Marceline does this for Simon. Finn does this for Fern. The show does this for the Mushroom War. It keeps the name of the catastrophe in the background art, and the occasional reference, and the ruined architecture of every landscape. It keeps the memory alive in a world that has moved on without quite forgetting, and the audience does this for the show itself. After the finale, after Come Along With Me, after the tree has been planted and the song has been sung and the epilogue has shown the world 1,000 years on, after all of it, the audience keeps the show's name, keeps coming back, keeps pressing play on the early episodes, letting Finn and Jake go out the tree fort door into whatever 11-minute adventure they are going to get into, because the show still lives, in whatever form it now takes. Streaming catalogue, rewatch, memory, the specific quality of light on a winter night when Holly Jolly Secrets aired and the Ice King appeared on a VHS tape as a man named Simon who had loved someone and been eaten alive by the thing he put on to save her. The show is still there, still warm, still alive in the same way that the smoke from the tree fort chimney implies warmth, even when you cannot see the fire directly. Someone lit that fire. Someone is home. Before we move on, if you are enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is a version of why Adventure Time feels so comforting that has nothing to do with the specific episodes or characters or lore that exists at the level of rhythm. The show runs 11 minutes, 22 minutes for two-part episodes, 44 minutes for the finale, but primarily 11. 11 minutes is approximately the time it takes to feel something begin and resolve. It is short enough that nothing needs to be rushed, because there is not much time to fill. Long enough for a complete emotional experience. Short enough that you can watch 2 or 3 in a row and not feel the weight of a commitment. Long enough that each one has time to breathe, to be itself, to introduce a problem and work it through to an ending. There is something specific about 11-minute storytelling that longer formats cannot replicate. The brain does not have time to build defenses. The story begins and you are already in it, and then it is over before you have fully decided how you feel about it. And what remains is an emotion without a complete analysis attached to it. This is not manipulation. It is the natural result of a form that is brief enough to bypass the critic in you and speak directly to the part that just feels things. Adventure Time uses its 11 minutes with extraordinary care. Every joke has at least two functions. It is funny, and it tells you something real about the characters. Every emotional moment is preceded by enough world establishment that it lands in context. Every episode ends in a place that is somehow different from where it started, even if only slightly, even if only in tone, and the 11-minute rhythm creates a specific relationship with sleep. When you watch Adventure Time as a sleep aid, and millions of people do, explicitly, this is not a marginal use case but a primary one for the show. You are experiencing the rhythm of it, more than the specific content, the rhythm of a world that has problems, and resolves them in 11 minutes. The rhythm of a voice that knows where it is going. The rhythm of an ending, again and again, that is not catastrophic, that closes gently on something warm. Even the sad episodes end on something okay. Holly Jolly Secrets ends with the Ice King getting his tapes back. I Remember You ends with the flashback. Simon in the Ruins, the teddy bear, the stopped crying, the looking up. Escape from the Citadel ends with a flower growing from the wound. The saddest moments in the show end on continuation. The world keeps going. Someone is still home. This is what it means for a show to be genuinely comforting, rather than merely distracting. Distraction keeps the difficult things at bay by filling the space where they would be. Comfort does something different. Comfort sits with you in the middle of the difficult things and reminds you that they are not the whole story, that there is also warmth, that there is also the drawer, and the viola and the candles, that there is also Jake. Adventure Time is not a distraction from the world. It is a model of how to be in it. The show's final gift, the one that comes after all the grief and the lore, and the lost arms, and the found homes, and the slowly growing tree, is perspective. In the framing story of Come Along With Me, two beings named Shermie and Beth are asking an older BMO to tell them about the old days, the days of the tree fort, of Finn and Jake, of the Great Gum War, and everything that followed. BMO, now the king of Ooh, keeper of memory, the being who outlasted almost everything, tells the story. And when the story is over, Shermie and Beth climb the ancient tree, the tree that grew from Fern's remains, the tree that has been growing for 1,000 years, the tree that still holds the Finn sword at its highest point. And they reach the top, and they look out at Ooh, and what they see is a world that is still going, still strange and beautiful, and full of things that no episode ever quite got close enough to fully see. A world that has continued in the absence of the specific people who shaped it. A world that was made different by Finn and Jake and Marceline and Bubblegum and Simon and all of them, and that carries the shape of that difference forward, even though most of the beings living in it now have no direct memory of the people who made it what it is. This is impermanence, and permanence existing simultaneously. Everything stays, Marceline sang, right where you left it. Everything stays, but it still changes. That paradox, that the world changes completely while the past remains exactly as it was, is the show's deepest comfort, because it means that what you have done with your time is permanent. The care you gave is permanent. The love you expressed, even when it was not received the way you meant it, even when it came back to you, changed and strange, that love is permanent. It happened. Nothing can unhappen it. You and I will always be back then. Adventure Time ran for 8 years and produced 283 episodes and an enormous amount of supplementary material, specials and miniseries, and the Distant Lands HBO Max specials that began airing in 2020, and the Fiona and Cake spin-off on Max in 2023, and a film announced in 2024 with Rebecca Sugar and Adam Muto and Patrick McHale all involved in its development. The world of the show continues to grow and to find new stories in the universe that Pendleton Ward and his collaborators built. But even without any of that additional material, even if Come Along With Me had been the last thing, what was built would be enough. The tree fort would still be there, the drawer would still be open, the clock would still say, Finn and Jake timeless, and the smoke would still be rising from the chimney. Adventure Time is comforting because it does not simplify the world into a version that is easier to live in. It takes the actual world, ruined and strange and full of people who have lost things and kept going anyway, and shows it to you with enough warmth and enough colour and enough 11-minute rhythmic resolution that you feel, watching it, that the world might be survivable, that the things you carry might be lighter if you had someone to carry them with. That home is possible, even in the ruins, even after the catastrophe, even after the father who cannot remember your name, and the arm that became a flower, and the 1,000 years of not being able to say the true thing. The show is comforting because it believes in warmth the way that great things believe in warmth, not naively, not by ignoring the cold, but by insisting that warmth is possible in the same world where the cold exists, the same world where the Mushroom War happened, the same world where a man named Simon put on a crown and lost his mind and found a little girl crying in the rubble and gave her everything he had left, the same world where 1,000 years later a vampire keeps watch over a pumpkin patch so that the person she loves can finally, for the first time in 2 months, rest. The show is comforting because it shows you what it looks like when two beings, a human boy and a shape-shifting magical dog, decide that whatever happens, they belong to each other, that the tree fort they live in is home not because of what it contains, but because of who they are when they are in it together, that the clock on the wall is right, that the names on it are permanent. That timeless is not a promise about the future, but a description of something that was already true, and therefore always will be. Pendleton Ward said, in his Rolling Stone interview from October 2014, that he stepped back from the show because having quality of life outweighed the need to control this project and make it great all the time. He needed rest. He needed the equivalent of Jake's drawer and BMO in the corner and the candles burning low. He needed the tree fort. The show he built, at its core, is about exactly this need and about its satisfiability, about the fact that rest is possible, that home is real, that the things you love persist in some form beyond what you can hold directly, that the smoke from the chimney means someone is there, someone is always there. That is why it feels so comforting. That is the whole answer, and it has been the answer in every episode from the first to the last, in the knife storm, and the imaginary lava, and the Christmas tapes, and the ruined city, and the flashback of a man finding a crying child in the rubble and having exactly one thing to give her, and giving it without hesitation. The show is the thing Simon gave, small and soft and present, found in the ruins of something enormous, handed over in the specific way that care is handed over when nothing else is left to give. Here, this is for you. I hope it helps. And look, she stopped crying. She is looking up. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.